Hey everyone, Chien here. You should at least know that I love classic media, if you're a returning viewer. And may have seen other videos where I talk about my love of classics. But here, I'm gonna tell you of these silent films that are gonna blow your mind with their perfect storytelling, music, and practical effects. Since we're going back in time when the movies were not as they are today, but these films did what they had to make it a hit and classic that it is now. And definitely get you thinking in how did they do it back in the day? Well, sorry I can't answer that. It's complicated even for me a little. But this will be in chronologically ordered and not a countdown to number 1 for top 10 lists. And also, just to tell you how crazy I've gotten, I literally watched all of these films for you, just for you. It's okay, I'm fine. Maybe a little insane considering my mind was blown by these films, but here is your top 25 silent films that are fun and crazy enough to blow your mind. So just before this starts, I guess I should just at least recap on what silent films are for those who don't know. You could just skip this part if you know what silent films are, but if you don't, please stay and let me recap it for you. A silent film is basically films that are like this. Like that, as since they have no sound. So you can't hear the actors talking. However, the only sound comes from musicians to play music. Silent films are unique since they don't have audio. The actors rely on narrative and emotion, using facial expressions to tell what is going on, and use intertitle cards to explain some of the scenes, and also some words that the characters are talking about. But once sound became diffused, silent films were not as popular anymore, but still hold a place as being part of the first films, the first movies, who paved the way for what we have now. And so that what makes them important, even though some have been lost to time or are very obscure. These films right here are found and able to be viewed over 100 years now, because that's how old they are. Well, some of them. And more the years pass on, it gets more to that 100 era. So sit back and relax, and just need me one more thing to get into the mood. There, perfect. Let's get started with this chronological list. Number 1, The Ten Commandments, 1923. This silent film is now over 100 years old now, and with its title, you can already tell the biblical standpoint of this film, talking about Exodus, the second book of the Bible. Now wait a moment. I don't care if you're into the Bible or not, but this is a must-watch film. You see, this isn't your Prince of Egypt here type of flick, not your 1950s or 2007 CGI film. And all those are good films in their own 10 Commandments, right? But the 1923 silent film directed by Cecil D. Bunnell, I'm pretty sure I just butchered his name, who's a famous filmmaker that also directed the 1950s 10 Commandments. This film is a drama and thriller and already makes the hit for its time. The practical effects might be surprising and fascinating as it was back in the day. And interesting how it was all done without the editing and movie making stuff we have now. The film starts with the prologue, talking about the Exodus of the Bible, but it's not about Moses. The prologue doesn't stay on the Israelites and Moses very long, like you would expect by the movie's title. It's actually taking place in the present time of when the movie came out. released in the 1920s, soon later where the true story of the film begins, showing an old mother reading the story to her two young adult sons, who share a different view of the rules to the Ten Commandments. One respects them while the other one does not, and decides he's gonna break every rule in the commandments just to show they don't offer anything at all. Yeah, definitely sounds like the perfect mind my language for that horror movie character who doesn't listen to the rules and gets killed instantly, right? Or, the other flip side of the main character who's a jerk because, yeah, he's that type of character. And of course, bad stuff does happen to this brother. A young woman gets tangled up in it and so forth, and I wouldn't want to spoil the rest of the film because this is a film you have to watch to believe it. It's in the public domain, like much of these films are, and it is also streamable on Tubi. And oh yeah, and I should say this about the director. He literally buried the Egyptian set in the sand of the Guadalupe Dunes of Central California. He literally buried the set. And get this, no one knows why. So yeah, there's something unexpected and puzzling for you there. But this is a must-watch film. It definitely got more elements of being a horror movie when it comes to the music and some scenes. And it definitely is like making Easter eggs to make a note but in subliminal messages of the doomed fates that are tangled in those who decide to mess with fate, consequences, and well, I guess I can say this, the will of God. Number 2. Nanook of the North. Nanook of the North is a film from 1922, directed by Robert J. Flaherty. This is a docudrama, so what is happening in the film is actually all staged, but it meant to show the work and life of Inuit culture, Eskimo. There has been a lot of controversies around the film, from hoax claims and so forth, especially when the film was made, which all was true, but even so, it is still a good film to watch. The direction in showing how Inuit people have lived is a big part to the film, as it shows the main character, Nanook, and his family surviving in the ungoverned peninsula of northern Quebec, Canada. They are called fearless heroes and showing goings-on about the day for a normal Inuit family, which they were trying to make, even though when the film came out, Inuit people had already integrated the use of Western clothing and rifles to hunt rather than a harpoon. Nanook is said to be a real Inuit person, which the film is named after. This film is a good watch, and I recommend giving it a chance on your time viewing. You can also find this film straight on YouTube, free to watch by the uploads. Number 3. A Trip to the Moon. A Trip to the Moon is one of the shorter silent films and oldest on the list as of right now. It's also the first French silent film on this list, too, and it's directed by Georges Méliès, who based it on Jules Verne's novel From the Earth to the Moon, as well as the sequel Around the Moon. It came out in 1902. And it's a sci-fi film of its time, as a group of scientists fly to the moon and back to Earth in the course of just 14 minutes. Because that's how long the film is. And since its film came out in the early 20th century, of course humans have not gotten to the moon by that time, and it would only be until the 1960s would that achievement be made by Neil Armstrong in the rest of NASA and so forth. So a lot of imagination of traveling to the moon would be in this film. From aliens to a surreal setting, one of the top highlights of this film, and more films on this to come after. There's also early stop motion animation. One notable scene would be the moon itself, especially when the group's tiny rocket that definitely would not be used in actual space travel. And also one other thing I would like to say. The moon's landing was not staged. Fight me, conspirators, but you're not changing my mind. If you want to see a fake moon landing, here's your pick. It's a decent 14-minute watch. Number 4, The Kid. Now, I don't need to give an introduction to this film. The Kid is a 1921 silent film by the one and only Charlie Chaplin. And by far, you may know he's one of my favorite silent film actors. Chaplin did not only act in this film, but he was the director, writer, and producer. The film mixes comedy and drama, as the tramp, one of Chaplin's most well-known characters, raises an abandoned baby as his son, the Kid, also known as Joan. This is one of the films that doesn't just make you laugh, but cry as well. The Kid was played by Jackie Coogan, who became a famous actor himself, and you may best know him as Uncle Fester, the first actor to play the creepy uncle of the Addams Family. Dun 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 dun. Right, guys? So in this, you can see or say, I saw a little Uncle Fester. Number 5, The Phantom of the Opera, 1925. The Phantom of the Opera story is what needs no introduction from me, as you should know how the story goes for it being a classic novel. But this silent film marks the beginning to Universal Pictures' classic monster films, since they made this film as sort of the beginning test for the others to come. And it's about one of the famous Phantom of the Opera films. The direction was done by Rupert Julian, and the makeup for the actor Lon Chaney playing the Phantom and all its horror was even kept a secret from the studio until its premiere. They made a ton of creepy scenes, music perfect to get you to chill, and don't let me forget the reveal of the Phantom's disfigured face itself. I mean, look at it. His shocked expression when Mary Philbin takes off Lou Chaney's mask is one not to forget, no matter how old this film gets. Number 6, The Passion of Joan of Arc. It isn't just me, or having the word the passion in the title is very common, especially for Christian and biblical films. Yes, I'm referring to Passion of Christ. But The Passion I'm talking about is a silent historical film of Joan of Arc. And need I say more? We know who Joan of Arc is. She is the female knight who was burned to the stake for heresy and wearing men's clothes, because that was a crime in medieval time, blah blah blah. The film was released in 1928. It is a great and epic as it gets. And it's basically on the actual recording of Joan of Arc's famous trial. The body language and face expression to get the point and emotion of the film knows no bounds. Renee Jean Falconetti, who plays the titular saint, puts on a perfect portrayal of Jeanne d'Arc in her final moments before execution. Sadly, finding The Passion of Joan of Arc for free is hard, so suggest trying to go to TV and see if it's being shown or do more other ways to find it. Number 7, HÄXAN. Okay, this film, HÄXAN, is a Swedish horror film from 1922, and boy, I wouldn't recommend this film to a very religious person, as it focuses on witches, especially the torture of them. It's got depictions of demons and the devil, like the director of the film, Benjamin Christensen, is literally playing the devil. And don't tell me this design doesn't give you a chill down your spine. HÄXAN is still a good film despite all these, I have to say. Its horror of talking about the Inquisitions and reacting to them is spot on. And the music for this film takes the creep factor high as it goes on mass hysteria and other mental stuff. but when this film came out, it was literally banned in the US, from what I hear, but also censored in some other cases. So yeah, like definitely a film to watch if you want to scare yourself, because as this film gets older, the scarier and devilish it gets. Number 8, Metropolis. Okay, here's a silent film for all anime lovers. And you know why? If you are familiar with the 1940s manga or its anime movie from 2001, Metropolis. That anime was based off of this 1927 silent film of the same name, and you may recognize the film by the image of the robot lady. It's also known that the legendary manga creator Osamu Tezuka has only seen this image and not the actual film, but this image was what inspired him to make his manga, and the anime movie from 2001 takes elements from the 1927 silent film. But back to the film itself, this is one of the most popular and well-known German silent films with its sci-fi style. It was also a book written by the director of the film's wife. The plot of the film is in the future with wealthy industries and business migrants and their top employees reign over the city of Metropolis from colossal skyscrapers, while underground dwelling workers toil to operate the great machines that power it. So basically the overworld and underground like theme. Maybe you can think of other stories in those themes, but I think of Honkai Star Rail's first trailblaze mission. This is really good film that can stand next to the Ten Commandments 1923 in my book, and I recommend giving it a watch. Also, this film may or may not make you fall asleep in the process. Number 9, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari is another German silent film coming from the horror genre. The film's set and overall theme can give a Tim Burton vibe. Or it did for me. I'll say you might look at the setting of The Corpse Bride in Nightmare Before Christmas. But the basic plot of the film basically takes place in a flashback. There is this doctor who you may know by the title is called Caligari. And he has this sleeping-walking man in a cabinet, like a coffin, that's a killer, and he uses the man named Cesare to kill people. Yeah, that's the basic point. But all in all, it's got one of the best gothic looking posters. The makeup of Chase is gothic terrifying, and I can't forget the set design is up top with the creep factor, and I can't forget the music too. Number 10, Chien Andalou, an Andalusian dog. So where do I even begin with this one? Chien Andalou, as is mostly known because it's a French silent film from 1929, its name translates to an Andalusian dog, and the plot was very confusing. Well, there's no actual plot, and it's can be a little bit of This gets really disturbing, and it's only over 21 minutes to whatever you think. Like, in the first, a lady gets her eye cut open, which due to the show, but I definitely can't tell it's fake. Also, there is a random decapitated hand in the middle of the road that was in some guy's box, in the ending of the film, which starts with a title card in spring, suddenly comes to the end with a girl and a boy we saw in the act before it, someone buried in the sand, and you know what? You look at the image and tell me what you think is going on, because it's no doubt that they are dead. Like, if you didn't think that silent films and old films are scary, here's your answer! Number 11, Battleship Potemkin. Battleship Potemkin is a 1925 Soviet-Russian silent film, which basically tells a real-life story of the battleship with the same name, when sailors start a mutiny that occurred in 1905 as part of the Russian Revolution, although like Nanook of the North, it's dramatized. But it's known as one of the greatest movies of all time according to Sight and Sound Critics poll in 2022, ranking 54th greatest movie of all time. One of the biggest scenes from this film is where a group of people are running down the stairs, the Odessa steps. Obviously also screaming, although you can't hear them because, well, in the movie it has no audio since it's a silent film. If it has voice talking, it wouldn't really be on this list. But back to the people running down the stairs, there is also this kid who gets shot in the back and is trampled by people. There is also blood in this film, but still something to watch. Number 12, The General. The General is a 1926 silent film made by another well-known famous silent actor, Buster Keaton, who also directs and stars the film alongside Clyde Buckman. It takes place during the American Civil War on the Confederate side. Unfortunately, since they were on the side that eventually loses, I do not like that side at all for a bunch of reasons, one being pro-slavery, but this is an old film and a lot more action that happened on the south side, so yeah, choice. Hated or not, I don't care. But the story of the General is based on the Great Locomotive Chase, which actually did happen, and in an 1889 memoir of the same name that was about the locomotive chase. This film was not received well when it came out, but now it's a sort of a cult classic. Its biggest scene was when the train collapses over a bridge, but my favorite part were Buster being a fake soldier, especially during the climax of the film. Number 13, Nosferatu. Okay, what do you want me to say about Nosferatu? This movie gets parodied a lot, especially in SpongeBob of all places, when this is a horror film and that's a kid show. But Nosferatu wasn't supposed to be seen by us since this is based on Bram Stoker's Dracula, and at the time it was right in the middle of copyright infringement, and all the copies were meant to be destroyed. But as you can see, we can still watch the film. But despite that old controversy, this is a good film to take a look at, as this also gives us the vampires we know now being weak to the sun. Yeah, in the novel Dracula, vampires don't burn the sun. It came from this film. And there's also a remake from 1979, Nosferatu the Vampire, and another remake that says is gonna come out with Bill Skarsgård playing the vampire of the film. Number 14, Shiraz, A Romance in India. Shiraz, also known as Shiraz, A Romance in India, is a 1928 silent film, and this is the first one of the only films on the list that are in the romance genre. By the name, you know this is Indian, but it's actually a German film, but it was filmed in India and has Indian actors. Good to see no whitewashing, which can be common in a lot of South Asian films that are not made in the country it's taking place from. Hollywood done that in the past, so just bring that up. But this film is an adaptation of the famous stage play by Nananjan Pal, which is based on the commission of the Taj Mahal. It's a very good and underrated film, despite no sound, and definitely needs a watch. Number 15, Pandora's Box, 1929. So by the name of Pandora's Box, you may think it's a silent film version of the Greek myth, but actually it's not. Like the 1923 The Ten Commandments, this film plays it similar to having the title allusion to the actual story being told. Like the myth, you have Pandora bringing in all the bad into the world. In this case of the film, Pandora's Box 1929 is about a seductive woman whose nature brings ruin to herself and those who love her. Just like the title makes it sound like when knowing the consequences of one's actions. Number 16, Steamboat Bill Jr. Nope, we're not talking about Mickey Mouse's Steamboat. But another Buster Keaton film, Steamboat Bill Jr. from 1928, this is one of his well-known silent films and it gets referenced a lot. Don't know it? Well, can this scene remind you of anything? And let me show you one it's referenced in the other TV shows. Murdoch, anyone? And that you got a young kid playing a young Buster Keaton. That became one of my favorite episodes of the whole entire show because of those references. But back to the actual Steamboat Bill Jr., this was Keaton's final film before he moved to MGM after The General was a flop. Which also not... it is now, but in the day it was. And I can see some whys. It's a really funny film. This one, like me just talking about it, it's not gonna give it justice. You just have to watch it for yourself. I even have a funny story that involved the film of going to the Hanover Theater in Worcester, Massachusetts. Where I was about like 12 years old and I was going to see the film for the first time with my dad because they were showing it. And the ticket person looks at me suspiciously that why a young person like myself watches silent film. Because apparently my generation finds them boring. Which is half true. I'm just one person who is okay with showing this passion in public, I guess. Far. But this list better make you like them better. As being the stepping stone for the films we have now. But yeah, back to the story. The ticket person gave me a question to see if I'll pay attention to the subtitles and all that stuff. I was in the psych voice because I really wanted to see Steamboat Bill Jr. and all I just said was, Charlie Chaplin! And this wasn't even a Charlie Chaplin film. It was Keaton, but yeah, that ticket person could see, oh, she knows I know my silent films. Okay, back to the list. This was my first Buster Keaton film, and yeah, give Steamboat Bill a watch. Watch it now. Number 17, 1 Week. This is another Buster Keaton film, and one of the funny ones. Like, it's super funny. It's basically a newlywed couple who receive a kit house as a wedding gift, which is basically a build-it-yourself house. And Keaton is trying to build the house, but it kind of gets out of hand and a bunch of other shenanigans happen. When I saw the film for the first time, since this is a short film, a lot of films on this list are not short, unfortunately, but this one is. But like, they get the build-it-yourself house stuck on train tracks and the train's coming. Welp, RP house. But luckily it passed because it was on another track. Phew. Not quite. You see, since I watch a lot of classics, I apparently have a sixth sense to when I know something's gonna happen before it even happens. Or I even spoiled myself to the clip. I didn't even do any of those things. I just felt like something else was gonna happen. That's how my sixth sense works to classic films. But I said to my mom and dad because they were watching it with me, another train is gonna come, isn't it? Well, I did not say it like that, but right when I said it at the right tip of my nose, because another one smashed right into their house. And whoever said silent feelings are boring and not funny, are you who I declare a mister of this one. Number 18, Speedy. Speedy is a 1928 film by another well-known silent film actor, that being Harold Lloyd. And I also have another film of his on this list to come up next, which he is famous for. And it's also a picture I'm pretty sure I showed on the channel before, but I can't remember the video. You see, the plot of Speedy is that he plays a guy whose middle name is Speedy, hence the title. And basically, his girlfriend's father owns a horse cart in New York City. Horse cars were a form of transportation, and the day and her father happened to be the last one to own said horse car. Speedy basically has to stop a sabotaging of the horse car by a greedy businessman who wants to buy the track of the horse car by any means necessary. Yes, over one measly track. But you know what? How evil businessmen work, I guess. But that's the sort of plot of the film. But anyway, it's a good comedic film with a crazy plot that deserves a view. Number 19. The CameraMan. The CameraMan is a 1928 Buster Keaton film. This was Keaton's first film at MGM, and ironically, MGM is a location in the film where Keaton plays a cameraman with a tin-type camera, a type of camera in the day. And he tries to get a job at MGM by taking pictures, mixing romance and comedy. This is one of Keaton's other best films, although this is also where it starts for Keaton saying he made a big mistake joining MGM, as they did a lot of changes and took Keaton's creative control, causing drastic and long-lasting harm to Keaton's career. But the CameraMan film, has deemed by the National Film Registry in 2005, says that the film is culturally, historical, or aesthetically significant. Number 20. Coney Island. There are a lot of films with the name Coney Island, mostly based on actual Coney Island, an amusement park in New York City. This silent film we are talking about comes from 1917 and was written and directed by Rob Coe's Fatty Arbuckle, also known as Fatty Arbuckle. And he also starts in the film alongside Buster Keaton, who plays as Fatty's rival and a cop with a mustache. This is one of Fatty Arbuckle's best films, according to my dad, and it's a short one only lasting 25 minutes. Number 21, Safety Last. Now, this one right here is one of my favorite Harold Lloyd silent films. Safety Last from 1923 mixes romance and comedy, which was really common in the day, so basically early rom-coms with the thing. And you may be familiar with this film from Harold Lloyd, with him climbing a building and hanging from this clock, and most certainly going to fall. And yes, this is also a film I was mentioning earlier with the picture during when we were talking about his film called Speedy. But yes, this one, give it a watch if you're a fan of Harold Lloyd or want to see more of this film. And for some reason, this isn't like the only time he has hung or got stuck on a building, I must mind you. Number 22, Habeas Corpus. This is one of Laurel and Hardy's shorts from 1928. Laurel and Hardy, as you may know, are a comic duo, and you may know them for doing talkies, which was the name of films with sound in the days, but they also did silent films. This is one of them. Habeas Corpus plot runs for 20 minutes, and Laurel and Hardy gets stuck with trying to collect a dead body for a mad scientist. A lot, and I mean a lot of shenanigans happen, each one funnier than the last, especially when sound effects were added to it, as well in other versions of this film. When it comes to comedy silent films, you can't miss out on a Charlie Chaplin, Harold Lloyd, Buster Keaton, and Laurel and Hardy film. You just can't miss out on these films. Number 23, Two Tires. Two Tires is another Laurel and Hardy silent film from 1928, which they did at MGM. And they basically are sailors just getting into a bunch of trouble on the road. It's another short of theirs and another funny one that deserves a watch. Number 24, City Lights. So City Lights is another famous classic film from Charlie Chaplin, a romance comedy from 1931 and the only one on the list to be released in the 30s, as silent films at this point were dying out and talkies started to become popular. It's known for showing disabilities, although how people in that would react to it back in the day. But it's not any offensive, I'll say to that. You see, Charlie Chaplin's tramp character falls in love with a girl who's blind. so she can only use the rest of her first senses to live her life. And so the tramp basically tries to win some money to give to her to pay and get her surgery for eyesight. And since she can't see, she thinks the tramp is a rich guy, although there is another actual rich guy who's trying to kill himself a couple of times, but the tramp had to stop him. But at the ending of the film was great. The blind girl actor, Virginia Cheryl, is not actually blind, but back in the silent film era, if you had a disability such as being deaf, it wasn't an issue. I'll say for that time period. Remember that people have a different mindset back in the day and view different things that we view as being wrong now. Something that we tend to forget and woke about, which for those people who do that, I don't judge you because you are correct, but you have to make sure of the time period in question, how people viewed stuff. Felt I had to say something like that in somewhere in this list. And finally, let's get into our final silent film on this list by the legendary actor who knew Charlie Chaplin and known for playing famous swashbuckling characters, one that carves with a Z. Who could that be? P5 fans, you gotta know this persona. Number 25, The Mark of Zorro, 1920. Not to be confused with the 1940s version or the 1974 TV series. Yeah, this got remade twice. The Mark of Zorro we are talking about here is his first, so I guess that makes 3 Mark of Zorro films. One TV show. But this silent film version, which stars Douglas Fairbanks, and this guy is a swashbuckling master, let me tell you. He didn't just play Zorro, he also played a musketeer, Robin Hood, and the Iron Mask guy. I think. If I got that wrong, tell me. The plot of The Mark of Zorro shouldn't be that hard to even explain, but you should probably already know the classic plot, as it's been adapted into many Zorro media. But this is definitely 100% a film not to miss. Never miss it, a film of Fairbanks. If you're looking for something epic action in a silent film, he's gonna at least have one of them under his belt. Especially playing famous characters like these. Okay, we finally made it to the end of the top 25 silent films that are crazy and fun enough to blow your mind. To be honest, this was going to be a top 10 list and just called Top 10 Silent Films That Blow Your Mind, but my dad just kept naming on some really good ones that I couldn't miss. I did get through some of them, a lot were an hour long, but worth it. Since these films are very old, it would mean that they are all in the public domain and are easy to watch. So take your time to make it easy for you. At the end of this list, I linked it down, all of the silent films that are available. Quality may different, but I tried my best to find the ones that are good. I'm sure I found the best quality ones to watch. If I didn't, that's just what I could find. But for movie recommendations that isn't a silent film, but it's about silent films and a silent film actor's life we have been talking about on this list, there is a movie on Charlie Chaplin called Chaplin. And it's an adaptation of his biography, and you may know this film if you're a Robert Downey Jr. fan, as he played Charlie Chaplin and also won a Best Actor award for it. So you want to watch more about silent films in the perspective of one of the actors to get the feel of the era, definitely watch that movie. And I'm really glad I'm done with this, but this got to tell you that I am a magnet to classic media. And that comes from these silent films. Anyway, this is Silverchan, out, and enjoyed the films if you watched them. You better love them.